Imagine this. You open your eyes to a world that should feel familiar. Your bedroom, the soft light crawling through the blinds, the same digital clock ticking beside your bed. But something is off. Not in the room, but within you. You're not tired, not in pain, not even sad. And yet, you feel like you're being held down by something invisible. You lie there for a moment, not because you're sleepy, but because moving feels meaningless. The idea of breakfast, empty, work, numb, even joy itself, what used to ignite you, feels like a memory from someone else's life. You sit up, tell yourself to get going. You have no excuse not to. No trauma today, no emergency. So why can't you feel life pushing back? Why does every action feel like it's being done through a fog? You chalk it up to laziness, procrastination, maybe burnout, but then it starts happening more often. Days blend into each other. Motivation, once summoned by dreams and deadlines, now flickers like a dying light bulb. You start using words like uninspired or unmotivated, but even those feel too poetic. The truth is uglier and harder to define. You re-not living, you re-just not dying. And here is the paradox that stings like a splinter under your skin. You are doing everything right. You're showing up, paying bills, exercising sometimes, checking in with friends when you remember. You're consuming content that claims to help. You've organized your workspace, taken your vitamins. You've even tried gratitude journaling, only to stare at the page and feel like a fraud. By every modern metric, you should be okay, maybe even thriving. So why does it feel like you're vanishing? Now imagine this. What if your suffering isn't physical, emotional, or even mental? What if you're not depressed in the clinical sense, nor broken in any obvious way? What if you're not lazy, but spiritually starving? Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." He wasn't speaking metaphorically, he meant it. He saw it in his patients, their obsessions, compulsions, addictions, and chronic fatigue. They weren't weak or flawed. They were starving for meaning in a world that worships productivity, but ignores the soul. But here's the twist. Spiritual starvation doesn't look like suffering. Not at first. It looks like scrolling endlessly. It looks like keeping busy. It looks like numbing out with podcasts, workouts, apps, affirmations. It hides behind wellness routines and curated routines. It's not chaos. It's the absence of depth in a life overloaded with surface. You might feel haunted by a strange absence, like you're living in a house with a missing room, a space you can sense but not enter. And this missing room, this absence, starts whispering doubts into your daily rituals. Why bother? What's the point? Not because you're broken, but because something in you remembers a truth too painful to keep buried forever. So, what is this truth? Why do so many feel this way? Adrift in lives that seem fine on the surface, but feel hollow underneath. Could it be that the system you were born into, your culture, your education, your society, has trained you to suppress the very thing you most need to feel alive? Could it be that your laziness is not a flaw, but a symptom of spiritual neglect? And here comes the question you've never dared to fully ask. What if your soul has been speaking this whole time, and you've mistaken its hunger for personal failure? You see, this isn't about religion or dogma. This is about what Jung called the self, the whole, undivided being you were meant to become. Most people never get there. They live as fragments, they live as masks, and the longer you ignore the self, the louder it screams, not in words but in silence, in paralysis, in apathy that no morning routine can cure. You've been told you lack discipline, that you need a better system, a coach, a biohack. But what if what you truly need is something no algorithm can offer? Something ancient, something sacred. You are not lazy, you are not lost, you are not broken, you are starving, and before you can feed yourself, you must first name the hunger. This isn't a call to productivity, it's a cry for meaning. a call to reclaim the sacred terrain within you that modern life paved over with efficiency and dopamine and branding strategies disguised as authenticity. So ask yourself, what if your exhaustion isn't from doing too much, but from doing too little of what matters? What if you've been dragging a body through a world that no longer speaks the language of your soul? And what if, somewhere deep within you, the soul remembers? What happens when you finally turn and face the place you've been avoiding, because that's where we're going next? There is a strange and quiet tragedy playing out across the modern world. Not in the streets, not in war zones, but inside the minds of millions who feel as though something essential has gone missing from their lives and cannot name what it is. You may call it disconnection, disillusionment, apathy, but these are surface symptoms of something more profound, the slow starvation of the soul in a world that no longer believes the soul is real. Carl Jung saw it long before it became epidemic. In his clinical practice, he noticed that the most common affliction wasn't psychosis or neurosis. It was a loss of meaning, a spiritual void dressed in the clothes of boredom, anxiety, or fatigue. He wrote, "The majority of my patients consisted not of believers, but of those who had lost their faith." But faith in what? Not just in God or religion. He meant faith in the inner life itself, in the sacred mystery of being alive, in the idea that who you are cannot be reduced to roles, achievements, or algorithms. That deep within, there is a core self, unique, irrational, creative, and wild, that must be honored if you are to feel whole. In the modern world, this idea is not just ignored, it is actively repressed. We are born into systems that celebrate the outer life, metrics, status, utility. From an early age, you are taught how to perform, but not how to be. You are rewarded for obedience, not for curiosity. You're measured by standardized tests, not by inner depth. You're asked what you do before you're ever asked who you are. And so, piece by piece, you disconnect. At first, it feels normal. Everyone around you is doing the same. You learn to suppress the inconvenient voice inside, the one that questions, that wonders, that aches. You learn to drown it in achievement, in schedules, in approval. But what you don't realize is that each time you betray that voice, a part of you goes numb. You begin to forget what it feels like to be fully alive. Philosophers have called this the death of the soul. Friedrich Nietzsche, often misquoted and misunderstood, was not declaring God dead to celebrate nihilism. He was warning us. He saw that the metaphysical scaffolding that once gave human life depth and orientation was collapsing. Without it, he predicted, humanity would fall into spiritual despair, masked by progress. He called this the advent of the last man, a creature of comfort, security, and pleasure, who had lost the will to greatness, to purpose, to transcendence. Sound familiar? Arthur Schopenhauer, a thinker drenched in the melancholy of existence, saw the human spirit as tormented by an insatiable will, a striving that when unmet leads to suffering, and when fulfilled leads to boredom. It is a trap. We hunger for meaning. But the world offers us distraction. We chase it, hoping it will become nourishment. It never does. You begin to see why you're starving. You're not lazy. You are trying to survive in a reality that has nothing left to feed your inner life. And this hunger, the hunger for a life that speaks to your soul, is not simply emotional. It is existential. It is philosophical. It is sacred. The modern self has become an actor on a stage whose script was written by algorithms, corporations, and dead ideologies. The performance earns applause, but never love. You smile, you work, you succeed, and inside, a slow erosion continues. Jung called this the persona, the mask you wear to survive. It's not evil, it's necessary. But when the mask becomes the only face you show to the world and to yourself, you begin to forget there's anything underneath. This is where the crisis begins. The deeper layers of your being, what Jung called the shadow, the anima, animus, and the self, start to revolt. Not through words, but through symptoms. A mysterious fatigue, a creative block, a low-level dread that stalks you even in joy. You may call it laziness, but in truth, it is a cry. You are not doing nothing. You are grieving. You are grieving the loss of your own wholeness. Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist, claimed that we are condemned to be free, thrust into existence with no given purpose, no inherent meaning. But he also said that through radical honesty, we could reclaim ourselves. That authenticity, though terrifying, was the path to freedom. But authenticity requires contact with your desires, your pain, your contradictions. It requires slowing down in a culture that worships speed. It requires asking dangerous questions like, what if everything I've built was never truly mine? What if my ambitions were distractions from what really matters? What if my success is someone else's definition of safety, not my own compass of truth? The questions don't destroy you, they wake you. Because beneath all of this, the fatigue, the confusion, the paralysis is not weakness, but buried strength. This is the tension Jung spoke of between the ego and the self. The ego wants safety, the self wants wholeness, and the longer you live in exile from your own self, the louder the suffering becomes. Your hunger is not for motivation, it is for meaning, and the self, your deepest truth, does not want to be productive, it wants to be real. But here's the cost. To become whole, you must break the spell you've been living under. You must admit that what the world called normal may have been your prison all along, and that's terrifying, because to reclaim your soul, you must let the mask crack. You must walk away from a version of yourself that once kept you safe, but now keeps you small. You must ask not, what should I do with my life? But rather, what is life asking of me? This is the hidden problem. We are spiritually starving in a culture that tells us we're just unmotivated. And the more we believe that lie, the further we drift from the source. The good news, that hunger you feel, it means your soul is still alive. And it is trying in every moment of silence and stillness to lead you back to something sacred. Now, what happens if you ignore it? That's where we go next. You think you can manage it. The low hum of spiritual emptiness, the grayness behind your eyes. You tell yourself it's just a phase, that a vacation, a new project, or a new relationship will fix it. You keep moving, working, scrolling, smiling, anything but stopping, anything but listening to the silence. But the silence grows. Because the soul, once ignored, does not vanish, it metastasizes. It buries itself in your behaviors, your relationships, your body. And slowly, like water wearing down stone, it begins to reshape your reality. These are the unseen consequences of spiritual starvation. You begin to feel off in ways that have no name. A strange tension lives in your chest. Not pain, not fear, but something harder to describe, like waiting for a truth you're too afraid to hear. Your calendar is full, but your heart is hollow. Every success feels dimmed. Every celebration feels muted. You laugh, but the laughter echoes strangely inside you. This is not drama. This is disconnection. And disconnection doesn't just cost you joy. It warps your sense of identity. You begin to live as a fragment of yourself. You play roles, but forget the actor. You forget what excites you, what enrages you, what moves you to tears. You start needing more and more stimulation just to feel anything, and when even that stops working, you convince yourself that maybe you've grown numb or matured. You haven't. You've just forgotten how to feel without distraction. But the soul does not surrender easily. It will claw its way back into awareness, not through enlightenment, but through breakdown. A panic attack that hits you while brushing your teeth. A meltdown over spilled coffee. A sudden desire to abandon everything and start over, for reasons you can't explain. These are not signs of madness. They are signals, the suppressed self trying desperately to speak. Yet society has trained you to misread these cries. Instead of listening, we pathologize. We treat spiritual crisis like a productivity glitch. We label it anxiety. We medicate the symptoms. We optimize our lives into oblivion. We forget that sometimes suffering is not a malfunction. It is a message. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, once wrote, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." He didn't mean superficial fun. He meant escapism, a way to numb the pain of spiritual starvation. Endless entertainment, casual sex, obsessive self-improvement, even addiction to healing itself. But meaning cannot be manufactured. It cannot be bought, downloaded, or hacked. It must be discovered, suffered for, even bled for. And until that search begins, the soul rebels in silence. The problem is, our culture thrives on your disconnection. A spiritually starving person is easy to sell to, easy to manipulate. You crave purpose, so you are offered brands with slogans. You wake for belonging, so you're given identities off a shelf. You long for beauty, so you're shown curated lifestyles that feel just out of reach. You become a consumer of meaning instead of a creator of it. And this commodification isn't just personal. It's cultural. Entire societies are now structured around distraction. The average attention span is collapsing. Depth is seen as inefficient. Contemplation is laziness. Silence is terrifying. Even spirituality has been rebranded into digestible Instagram affirmations and weekend retreats. The soul is not just ignored, it is exploited. You start to notice the cost, not just in your life, but in your relationships. You find it harder to connect. Conversations feel hollow. Small talk suffocates you. You crave realness, but don't know how to offer it. Vulnerability feels dangerous in a world of masks. And so we perform love, friendship, intimacy, without ever letting ourselves be seen. You may be surrounded by people and still feel profoundly alone, because connection without presence is just proximity. And you can't be truly present when you are disconnected from yourself. This, perhaps, is the most tragic consequence of spiritual starvation. You stop trusting yourself. You stop trusting your instincts. You second-guess your desires. You suppress your anger, your sadness, your joy. You filter your truth through what is palatable, presentable, profitable. And over time, the voice of your soul becomes so faint that you forget it ever spoke. You are left with noise, performance, imitation. You are a shadow of what you were meant to become. And still the world calls you successful. Still they applaud. But applause cannot fill you. Followers cannot save you. Efficiency cannot replace ecstasy. The soul wants what the world cannot give. And the longer you try to make it fit, this wild, sacred thing, into a life designed for machinery, the more you break. Not dramatically, not all at once. You break like a cliff erodes, imperceptibly, until one day something massive collapses. And so, people walk away from marriages with no warning. They abandon careers that made sense on paper. They move to other countries, dive into strange spiritual paths, seek therapy or mysticism or art, not because they are lost, but because they are trying finally to be found. Because here is the unbearable truth: the soul cannot be silenced forever. And the longer you ignore it, the louder the consequences become. So here you are, suspended between two choices. You can keep performing, keep numbing, keep living the life that looks right but feels wrong. Or you can descend into the dark, into the quiet, into the dangerous territory where truth lives. But make no mistake, this descent is not depression, it is initiation. Initiation into the life that was always yours, waiting beneath the surface to be reclaimed. And to begin that reclamation, you must do something radical, not add more, but subtract, not run faster, but stop, not seek light, but enter the dark. The only way out is in. And this is where the rebellion begins. You are not here to be efficient. You are not here to perform. You are not here to mold yourself into a marketable, manageable version of humanity. You are here for something more dangerous, more unruly, and infinitely more sacred. You are here to wake up. But waking up is not a light switch. It is not a checklist. It is not an app. It is a rebellion. And rebellion, real rebellion, doesn't start with slogans or marches. It starts in the silence of your own heart. It begins the moment you realize, I can't live like this anymore. And not because you're tired, but because you're ready. The world will not give you permission to begin this rebellion. It will resist you, mock you, distract you. The people around you, often with the best intentions, will tell you to be practical, to stay safe, to be realistic. But realism is just fear in a suit. So you must give yourself permission to unlearn, to undo, to descend from the polished surface of your life into the deeper, messier truth that's been waiting for you all along. Carl Jung called this descent the individuation process, the journey of becoming who you truly are, beneath the masks, beyond the roles. It is not self-improvement. It is self-confrontation. It is the process of integrating the parts of you that were exiled. Your anger, your sexuality, your grief, your power, your irrational, mystical, vulnerable, divine essence. The parts the world told you were too much or not enough. To rebel is to reclaim them, and this reclamation begins not with answers, but with questions. Not the tidy kind you find on productivity blogs, but wild, burning, terrifying questions like, what parts of myself have I abandoned to be accepted? Who would I be if I weren't afraid? What truth have I been avoiding because it would cost me my current life? These are the questions of a soul cracking open, and when they come, don't run. Sit with them. Let them break you, because you are not breaking down. You are breaking open. This is the turning point, when the search for comfort ends and the search for truth begins. And that search will not lead you to something soft and sanitized. It will lead you to the sacred wilderness. You must learn to sit in silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of self. You must stop numbing, not because it's moral, but because it's killing your clarity. You must walk into the forest of your own being, without a map, without a timeline, without a goal. Only the raw, trembling desire to find what is real. This is the beginning of spiritual integrity. And integrity doesn't mean moral perfection. It means wholeness. It means refusing to live in fragments anymore. It means aligning your outer life with your inner truth, even when it costs you. Especially when it costs you, because the cost of truth is always high, but the cost of repression is your soul. Look to those who have done this before, the mystics, the artists, the saints and madmen, not because they had it all figured out, but because they were willing to walk away from the world's applause in order to hear the whisper of something eternal. Rainer Maria Rilke, the poet of solitude and soul, once wrote, "Go to the limits of your longing, embody me, flare up like flame and make big shadows I can move in." That is the voice of the self, the deeper you, the eternal flame, not efficient, not safe, but alive. To rebel in this world means choosing presence over performance, slowness over speed, truth over comfort, soul over survival. It means saying no to the life that numbs you, even if it once felt like home. It means stepping off the treadmill of external validation and learning to live by an inner compass, an ancient knowing that lives in your bones, not your browser history. But here's the hardest part. This rebellion is invisible. No one will applaud you for meditating at dawn, for grieving what you lost, for saying no when it would be easier to say yes. There are no medals for inner work, no trophies for soul retrieval. There is only your own quiet, sacred transformation. You may lose people, You may lose status, you may lose certainty, but you will find something greater. You will find your voice, your real one. Not the one trained to please or persuade, but the one that trembles with truth. You will begin to speak, not because it's expected, but because silence would be a betrayal. You will begin to create, not for likes, but because your soul demands expression. You will begin to love, not to fill a void, but because your cup is finally overflowing. And perhaps most terrifying of all, you will begin to feel deeply, wildly, fully. The pain, yes, but also the wonder. This is the power they don't want you to discover. The power of a human being who is no longer trying to fit in, but is trying to remember. And memory is the most radical act. Because to remember who you are is to remember what the world has forgotten. That you are not a machine. You are not a product. You are not a brand. You are a soul. And once you remember that, nothing can own you. Not fear, not failure, not even death. This is the quiet revolution. It happens in the heart, in the body, in the trembling hands of someone who finally puts down the mask and says, "Enough. Enough pretending, enough surviving, enough starving. I am ready to feel again. I am ready to live." And in that moment the old world ends and the real one begins. There comes a moment when the dust settles. The rebellion is no longer loud. The urgency softens. The battle cries fall silent. And in that hush, something stirs, not outside you, but within. You realize that the journey you've been on, the descent, the grief, the questioning, was never about becoming something new. It was about remembering what you already are. You were never lost. You were never broken. You were simply asleep. And now you are waking. But what are you waking into? Not a better version of yourself, not a happier, more successful you. No, what you're waking into is more raw, more ancient, more terrifyingly beautiful than any self-improvement fantasy could promise. You are waking into the truth. And here it is, the final, most powerful realization. Your soul is not a part of you. Your soul is you. Everything else, the ego, the mask, the ambition, the narrative, is scaffolding, necessary for a time, but temporary. Your soul is the only thing that has been with you through everything. It is the still point in your storm, the eternal within the temporary, the flame that has never gone out, no matter how dark it got. And this flame does not want comfort. It does not want success. It does not want control. It wants wholeness. That's why the hunger never left. That's why the apathy was so painful, because your soul never stopped calling for you to return. But here's the paradox, the unbearable, liberating paradox. There is nowhere to return to, because you never left. The entire journey, the spiritual starvation, the descent, the rebellion, it was never about gaining anything. It was about stripping away everything that stood between you and what's always been true. You are not lazy. You are not lacking. You are simply not meant to live on scraps of meaning. You are built for something deeper, for presence, for awe, for union with the infinite, however you choose to name it. Carl Jung spoke of this as the self, the integrated divine center of the psyche. The place where opposites meet, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, animal and angel. It is not perfection, it is not sainthood, it is wholeness, and wholeness does not mean safety, it means truth. It means walking into the fire of your own contradictions and coming out forged, not erased. It means embracing the wound, not as a defect, but as the very place where the soul enters. It means seeing your laziness not as weakness, but as a sacred pause, an invitation to reevaluate, to reclaim, to remember. What if that moment you couldn't get out of bed wasn't failure, but a holy revolt? What if your burnout was your soul's way of stopping you from continuing down a path that was slowly killing you? What if the apathy was a doorway, not a dead end? In a world that tells you to fix, heal, improve, upgrade, this realization is heresy, because it means there is nothing wrong with you. The pain you carry is not a glitch, it's a compass. It's pointing you back to the mystery, back to the silence, back to the questions that still burn under your skin. And here's what no one tells you: the soul does not want clarity, it wants devotion. It wants you to live with your whole heart, even when the map disappears. It wants you to sing when you're afraid, to create when you feel unworthy, to trust the mystery even when it makes no sense. It wants you to live, not safely, but fully. Because that is the point. Not success, not certainty, not even happiness, but aliveness. Real, raw, sacred aliveness. The kind that doesn't need to be understood to be real. The kind that burns away everything false. The kind that leaves you trembling and whole. And this is what spiritual starvation steals from you. Not your strength, not your willpower, but your aliveness. And now you are reclaiming it. You are no longer content to survive. You are no longer seduced by numbness. You are no longer interested in applause. You want truth. You want wholeness. You want to feel God in your bones, even if you don't believe in God. You want to feel like your life is a sacred flame, not a checklist. And that, right there, is the ultimate rebellion. You came into this world as a soul. You were taught to become a persona. Now you are returning to what you've always been. This doesn't mean you reject the world. It means you re-enter it, not as a ghost, but as a soul on fire. It means you create art, raise children, speak truth, hold hands, grieve, dance, cry, not to prove anything, but because this is what souls do. It means you stop outsourcing your worth to broken systems. It means you become the sanctuary you were always seeking. And it means, above all, that you no longer abandon yourself, ever again. This is not the end of the journey. This is the beginning of a life not driven by fear, but animated by soul. A life that cannot be measured in hours, worked, or money earned, but only in moments of truth, connection, beauty, and fire. So take a breath. Place your hand on your chest. Feel that? That's not just a heartbeat. That's the sound of something ancient and wild within you saying, you made it back, you remembered, now live like it. Because you were never lazy, you were never lost, you were starving. But now you are home. And the only question that remains, the only one worth asking, is this: what will you do with this aliveness now that you've remembered who you are?